Our final draft safety alert, Pilots Manage Risks to Ensure Safety, addresses fatal accidents involving ineffective risk management or poor aeronautical decision-making. Although few pilots knowingly accept severe risks, accidents can result when several risks of marginal severity are not identified or are ineffectively managed by the pilot and compound into a dangerous situation. This important issue can be associated with almost any type of fatal accident across all GA sectors. Mr. Michael Hune will present the first accident scenario.
Thank you. The airplane involved was a Mooney M20, which is a non-turbocharged single-engine airplane. The accident flight was the pilot's attempt to return to his home in Minnesota after a vacation. The accident occurred while the airplane was operating on an instrument flight plan in winter weather which included icing conditions over mountainous terrain in Wyoming. The pilot and his 3 sons were on board. All received fatal injuries. The pilot had a total time of approximately 940 hours. He had obtained his instrument rating about a year before the accident and had logged about 23 hours of actual instrument time, mostly over the relative lowlands of Minnesota. For the accident flight, the pilot was instrument current in accordance with the FARs, but his instrument requalification checkout was conducted over the course of 6 hours in 2 sessions the week before the accident. A review of the sequence of events reveals that initially the pilot utilized good risk management, but his backup plan was foiled by circumstances beyond his control. His original return trip was planned for a Sunday, the day before the accident, but he canceled that flight due to weather. He then purchased commercial airline tickets for a Monday return. However, that airline flight was canceled on Monday morning due to mechanical problems. The pilot then opted to fly his airplane home later that same day. On the day of the accident, the pilot's initial risk management efforts were manifested by his multiple weather briefings and multiple filed route changes. Those changes were due to the dynamic weather situation at the departure airport and over the mountainous terrain along the route of flight. When the pilot was finally ready to depart and was assigned his final ATC clearance, he accepted a route-altitude combination that was not in compliance with the regulations and which was near the airplane's published altitude performance limit. After departure, the pilot reported that he was having difficulty reaching his assigned altitude of 16,000 feet. Radar data indicated that the pilot achieved a maximum altitude of only about 14,500 feet. The pilot also reported that he was encountering icing conditions. For undetermined reasons, the airplane entered an uncontrolled descent, which continued until ground impact. Here's a graphic to illustrate the routes in the situation. This is a low-altitude IFR chart. The origination point, Jackson, Wyoming, is shown in blue. The first filed route via the DNW and BOY navigation facilities is shown in green. The second filed route via the DNW and RIW navigation facilities is also shown in green. Both these filed routes were on established airways. The green circle shows the minimum en route altitudes, or MEAs, for the airways, in this case 14,000 feet. The red line depicts the assigned route from ATC via the Kickney intersection direct to RIW. Note that this is an off-airway route. The red dashed circle highlights the off-route obstruction clearance altitude, known as AROCA, for the brown shaded area that the assigned clearance traversed through. The AROCA was 16,100 feet, a significant increase over the requested altitude for the non-turbocharged, fully loaded airplane. The red star depicts the approximate accident location. To provide a sense of the terrain the pilot was attempting to cross, this photograph depicts the view from the accident locale. The wreckage is shown in the inset. The NTSB determined that the probable cause of this accident was the pilot's decision to depart into known adverse weather conditions over mountainous terrain, which required operation near the limits of the airplane's performance capability. Contributing to the accident was an improper clearance issued by the air traffic controller and the pilot's acceptance of that clearance. The primary missed opportunity was that the pilot did not adhere to his initial risk management strategy. The pilot's initially conservative decision-making was overtaken by external pressures, which then adversely affected his conduct. In this case, it was the building time pressure to return home and his subsequent decision to attempt the flight. On the day of the accident, the pilot did not avail himself to postponement or cancellation alternatives, although he did so the day before. The pilot did not question the routing or altitude assigned by ATC. He accepted a clearance that was not in accordance with FAA regulations, and he accepted a flight altitude that minimized his altitude performance margins. Once he departed Jackson, the pilot failed to exercise any turnback or diversion options, and he did not explicitly ask ATC for assistance. Other lessons that can be drawn from this accident include the following. FAA legal does not necessarily equate to safe. While the pilot was legal to conduct his instrument flight, he stacked the odds against a successful flight. The combination of the pilot's limited instrument experience, his recent instrument requalifications, the weather, the terrain elevations, and the airplane capabilities presented a very challenging set of circumstances. In combination, those factors significantly increased the risk level. Pilots should accurately evaluate their skill levels and equipment capability, and then follow through by aligning their options and actions with those evaluation results. Too many of the accidents that I investigate are repeat events which in retrospect were easily avoidable. Speaking as an air safety investigator who is also a pilot and an airplane owner, when I learn the details of an accident, I frequently find myself asking the question, what were they thinking about the persons involved and particularly their decision making? With alarming regularity, the best answer seems to be that at least for that particular flight, the decision-making process was far from rigorous. I wish every pilot could spend a few months as an air safety investigator. I believe that we would see their decision-making processes improve dramatically. Tying back to the overall topic of this meeting, and particularly to the risk management safety alerts, I am convinced that application of basic risk management methods would significantly reduce the number of GA accidents in this country. And I would just like to go off script for 30 seconds, comment on a remark that Chairman Hersman made, and where you categorize these as not accidents. And in fact, that's the takeaway I get in many of these events. Completely avoidable. They're not accidents. Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. During a return cross-country flight about midnight Central Standard Time, a twin-engine Cessna 310 impacted terrain while on a night IMC flight just short of the destination airport. The intended trip was an 85-mile return flight back to the pilot's home airfield. The area surrounding the airfield would be classified as open, flat terrain. The commercial-rated pilot was fatally injured, and the airplane was substantially damaged.
Mr. Hatch, could you pull the microphone just a little bit closer?
Sure. The pilot had flown to Oklahoma City for business and wasn't expected to stay the night. The pilot was well qualified, holding a commercial license in single and multi-engine aircraft and instructor ratings, and had about 4,300 total flight hours. The toxicology testing during the autopsy revealed 10 medications in the pilot's system, 4 of which were prescription medicines for anti-seizure and pain, and would have disqualified him for a medical certificate. A review of his personal medical records noted a history of severe migraines, including a doctor's visit about a week prior to the accident flight. The records also revealed a variety of potentially impairing medications that had been prescribed by these doctor visits. There was no record of the pilot's condition or treatments with the FAA, and the pilot held a Class 2 flight medical that was issued 7 months prior to the accident. During the day, the pilot had been in contact with family and friends, and they had told him the visibility was poor. Prior to the flight, the pilot contacted Flight Service Station and obtained a weather briefing. Again, the weather was night instrument conditions. On conversation with the briefer, the pilot stated his concern with the potential for fog. Complicating the weather briefing was the fact that the closest weather station was about 45 miles away from his home or destination airfield. The automated weather reporting station that was temporarily out of service at his destination airfield. The pilot conducted an instrument approach to the airport, however, was not able to land on the first approach. Radar data tracked the airplane's approach and showed the airplane executing the missed approach after descending to an altitude of 1,700 feet. The pilot stated to air traffic control that he'd try a second approach, that he wasn't sure a successful approach could be accomplished, adding that heavy ground fog was present. This slide represents a profile view of the second approach to the airport. The lines and altitude noted in black are information from the published approach procedure. The information noted in red is the airplane's track and altitudes taken from radar data. The airplane came to rest at a mean sea level altitude of about 1,440 feet, about a quarter mile from the end of the runway. The NTSB's probable cause was the pilot's impairment due to medication use, a migraine headache, or both, and his decision to continue the approach below minimum without the proper visual reference, resulting in the subsequent collision with terrain. Contributing to the accident was the pilot's falsification of medical information to the FAA. In looking at this accident, the pilot had both the information and experience to make the flight. The pilot had received weather information, including the potential for fog at night, and still departed on the flight and flew the approach below minimums. The pilot had potentially disqualifying medical condition that was not declared, and it was on several medications that could impair decision-making ability. In aviation, we often have acronyms that remind pilots of operational procedures. The Managed Risk Safety Alert mentions the I'm Safe acronym, and it certainly applies here. Issues of illness, medication, stress, fatigue are easily identified in this case. Add in poor weather conditions and get home-itis, this flight would have been better accomplished another day. The next presenter will be Mr. Tim Sorensen.
Good afternoon. This accident involved a Cirrus SR-20 airplane that collided with trees and terrain in daylight IMC near Crystal Lake, Illinois. The intended destination was the DuPage Airport, located about 30 miles west of Chicago. The accident site was located about 22 miles north of DuPage. No flight plan had been filed, and the pilot and 3 passengers were fatally injured. Daylight VMC prevailed at the departure airport and throughout the initial portion of the flight. However, the flight encountered deteriorating weather, and the destination airport was under IFR at the time of the accident. The pilot expressed concerns to air traffic controllers about getting trapped by IFR conditions after landing. The accident pilot held a private pilot certificate. However, he did not hold an instrument rating. He had accumulated about 207 total flight hours and had recent experience in the accident airplane. When queried during the flight, the pilot informed air traffic controllers that he had been receiving instrument flight training. However, discrepancies with the pilot's logbook entries shed some doubt on the validity of his instrument flight training. There was no record that the pilot obtained an official weather briefing. Before departing on the accident flight, the pilot told a line service representative at the FBO that he was aware of the weather west of Chicago and that conditions were forecast to be VFR at their estimated time of arrival. The departure airport and initial portion of the flight were conducted under VFR. However, at the time of the flight's arrival, the intended destination airport was operating under IFR. At the time of the accident, local airports were reporting marginal VFR conditions. Incidentally, as the flight entered the Chicago terminal area, the airplane passed southwest of Midway Airport, which was reporting marginal VFR conditions. Air traffic control radar data provided information about the accident airplane's route of flight. This map shows the flight path in blue overlaid onto an aeronautical chart. The flight entered the Chicago terminal area south of Midway Airport and proceeded on a northwest course to a point about 5 miles south of DuPage Airport, where the pilot turned north. The pilot inquired about landing at DuPage, but was advised that the airport was under instrument flight rules. After the pilot inadvertently overflew the airport, the controller issued a landing clearance to the pilot. The pilot ultimately elected not to land at DuPage, citing his concerns about getting trapped by the weather. This slide depicts the meandering path of the accident flight subsequent to his contact with the DuPage Tower controller. The pilot flew north from DuPage Airport and was handed off to Chicago Approach Control. The approach controller provided weather conditions at local airports, and the pilot indicated that he would proceed to an airport where VFR conditions were reported. However, the pilot later decided against that plan, informing the controller that he didn't want to mess with the weather and he didn't want to get stuck. The radar data depicted the accident airplane subsequently entering a right-hand descending spiral. A witness reported hearing an airplane that sounded like the pilot was doing aerobatics, but he was not able to see it because of the cloud cover. Shortly afterward, he observed the airplane below the clouds in a 70-degree nose-down attitude before it struck the ground. A second witness also described the sound of an airplane in aerobatic flight. She then observed the accident airplane exit the clouds in a nose-down attitude. A post-accident examination determined that the airframe parachute likely deployed as a result of the impact. The NTSB determined that the probable cause of this accident was the non-instrument rated pilot's decision to continue flight in IMC, which resulted in the pilot's spatial disorientation and loss of control of the airplane. There are a number of lessons that other pilots can learn in order to prevent accidents due to continued flight into IMC. First, there was no record that the pilot obtained an official weather briefing. Although he was reportedly aware of adverse weather in the vicinity of the destination airport, the investigation was unable to confirm the scope or adequacy of any weather information he may have obtained before the flight. Based on his indecision exhibited during the flight, it seems likely that he did not consider alternatives in the event the flight could not be completed as planned. The pilot repeatedly expressed a concern about getting stuck by the weather. It seems clear that the pilot's schedule did not allow for a delay in the planned itinerary. Possibly because of this, the pilot failed to deviate to any of several airports in the area that were reporting VFR conditions. In addition, he had the option of returning along the initial flight path where weather conditions were better. Finally, the pilot did not seem aware that weather conditions were not conducive to VFR operations at the destination airport. Although the pilot could have requested a special VFR clearance in order to land and take off, for some reason he did not do so. This accident illustrates that marginal weather conditions require more detailed pre-flight planning, which should include obtaining an official weather briefing, identifying specific alternatives to the flight itinerary in the event that the flight cannot be completed as initially planned, identifying specific alternatives to personal plans in the event of a flight deviation, and finally, pilots must have the discipline to deviate to an alternate airport based solely on safety of flight considerations and not on any personal constraints.
The 3 accidents that staff just presented are summarized in the draft safety alert, Pilots Manage Risks to Ensure Safety. The safety alert also provides links to educational resources, including some risk management checklists, and it offers pilots the following advice.
Understand that effective risk management takes practice. Risk management is a decision-making process by which you can systematically identify hazards, assess the degree of risk, and determine the best course of action. Understand the safety hazards associated with human fatigue and strive to eliminate fatigue contributors in your life.
Be honest with yourself and the FAA about your medical condition. If you have a medical condition or are taking medication, do not fly until your fitness for flight has been thoroughly evaluated. Develop good making practices that will allow you to identify personal attitudes that are hazardous to safe flying. Apply behavior modification techniques, recognize and cope with stress, and effectively use all resources.
Be honest with yourself and your passengers about your skill level and proficiency. Refuse to allow external pressures, such as the desire to save time or money, or the fear of disappointing passengers, to influence you to attempt or continue a flight in conditions in which you are not comfortable. Plan ahead with flight diversion or cancellation alternatives, and brief your passengers about the alternatives before the flight. This concludes the staff presentations on this safety alert. We are prepared to answer your questions at